Yu-Gi-Oh versus Pokemon, except it isn't because this is me when I lie. Hey, this is GatorX, and yeah, during Pokemon World Championships about 2 weeks ago, which I did get to attend, we'll talk more about that later, one of these posts was going around comparing Pokemon World Championships to Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, of course, you know, it's one of those posts filled with information just meant to incite controversy, get people fighting, and of course farm some likes. The thing is though that I have played these games before and we've seen these exact types of posts last year and the year before that. Now it's no lie that obviously Pokemon makes a lot more money than Yu-Gi-Oh! And you see that money nowhere more than the World Championships, where it's one of those stages that the entire world gets to watch. Everybody's there, a lot of spectators, a lot of people playing, very important event. It's the culmination of the games, you know, not just the video games, but the card games, and so on and so on. For Pokemon at least. For Yu-Gi-Oh! It tends to be very similar, though of course, you know, a lot of the discussion around it is very different. So Pokemon World Championships, I'll go and talk about that for a bit. I did do a full video on my Pokemon channel talking about it because I did get to attend. It was in Anaheim, California this year. I had a great fun time, and it was really, you know, just a lot to experience. The main thing was that on Championship Sunday, during the finals, the final event did take place inside an arena, which was part of the venue, and it was, you know, huge, big, it was crazy. There was a stage set up in the middle, and probably the most interesting thing is that during the trading card game event, the stage actually had a screen in it, and it showed a lot of the cards on the screen. Obviously, there was still the actual video feed that is the same that they would show on the stream. This was displayed inside that theater as well, or inside that arena as well. But it's one of those things that, you know, really just makes you feel like things are coming alive, especially in the card game. Now, being a Yu-Gi-Oh fan and people from Yu-Gi-Oh also seeing this, it really does feel like this is something that should be in our card game, just because in the anime that is how a lot of things are presented, especially with like the big holograms, and that's kind of like the idea that a lot of people have in their heads, you know, not just like people who play the card game all the time and still stick with it, but kind of your general people who have like, yes, I've seen Yu-Gi-Oh, yes, I remember Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, maybe I don't play so much now as much anymore. That's the idea that they have. That's like the ultimate realization of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think that is still a cool goal to attain. Seeing Pokemon get close to that, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Not so much, so it does feel a little bad. Though of course, you know, the thing is this image of the arena from Pokemon TCG and, you know, the Pokemon Finals overall was being paired with just kind of a random image. This picture is apparently from one of the YCSs that was happening, I think the same weekend or maybe the weekend before. Of course, that's not necessarily comparable. You know, Pokemon World Championships, all that coming together, and then a YCS. YCSs are still important, but they're not worlds. In previous years, though, for Yu-Gi-Oh! Worlds, we have seen, you know, big extravagant stages and all this put in, you know, all this effort put into the presentation. And now with the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships happening over this last weekend, I did get to watch a bit of the stream. I didn't attend. It was actually in Paris this year, which already is like a big sign of like, hey, oh my gosh, this is something crazy, this is something big, there's a lot going on here. And watching the presentation, or, you know, the live stream, I was pretty impressed with a lot of the overall presentation. This is something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been working on for a while, and I think that overall, like, a lot of the discussion around those posts, around a lot of the discussion around, like, you know, why can't we have this, and why isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Doing as well, or why isn't Konami putting as much effort in? I think it does stem from a lot of other complaints or a lot of other gripes that people have with Konami, with Yu-Gi-Oh! Overall, you know, Master Duel as a whole, and it becomes a scapegoat for all these complaints to say, like, you know, they don't care about us. Look at our events, dog. And I think that when you take a picture of like one table off to the side or things like that, you know, it can feel like that. I was at Los Angeles Regionals for Pokemon last year, and while the presentation was still nice, they still had a main stage, there were some cool things everywhere, there were just a lot of tables inside a big venue. That's what a card game is. That's just how it is. But yeah, you've seen a lot of presentation for Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships in Paris this year. Seems really great. For one thing, you know, they had an opening ceremony, obviously not as big as the opening ceremony that Pokemon had. But again, I think you really do need to not necessarily temper your expectations, but you need to realize that Pokemon is the literal biggest franchise in the entire world. It is not just a card game, it is a video game, it is a merchandise machine. People buy a bunch of the cards without even really playing the card game, mostly to collect, and that's something cool as well. But when you're Pokemon and you have lines upon lines of people just waiting to get into the store to buy plushes and shirts and everything, that is just a sign that yes, this is an entire franchise that lives outside just the competitive aspect to it, but it is still really great that everything is able to come together in the World Championships. But the point is, yeah, for Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships, there were still some issues, at least from what I saw in the live stream. Some of the mics not necessarily working all that well during the first day for the commentators. A lot of the first day presentations didn't look all that huge or expansive, especially with some of the commentators basically standing in front of like a wall for a bit. But all around it, there was a lot going on. I mean, for one thing, the promotional shots that they were able to get from the first day and able to show during the presentation on the actual TCG day looked really nice. It was done really well. One of the museums nearby, they actually set up a Yu-Gi-Oh! Exhibit inside it. I think that would have been really great. Like, saying someone who went to the Pokemon World Championships, yeah, there was stuff there, like the Pokemon Center for the store, and there was kind of a mini museum for stuff like going over the history of worlds, but I think like really taking advantage of being in Paris and utilizing some museum space to show off actual artwork of Yu-Gi-Oh! Great idea. And the actual stage for finals was done really well. It's not a huge arena, and I think that is, again, something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Can work toward eventually, but it was still, really big and hype, and especially too with the games and with the audience there. And just a lot of things that they did afterwards. They had pyrotechnics on stage, which is something that they've done before. It's just that I think a lot of people tend to ignore it. This year, I think they did a lot better. Yu-Gi-Oh! Themselves did a lot better, actually inviting content creators and really encouraging them to post about it and get the word out there. But of course, there are a lot of little things that Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely can improve. Stuff outside of just the World Championships. I mean, for one thing, why isn't every YCS streamed? I think that that's something that should happen because it's a good way of getting things out there. And one thing I really do appreciate in this whole realm of presentation that we've been seeing is, the ban list reveals. Obviously, there wasn't a ban list reveal for Worlds because that's not necessarily the time for it. They got to evaluate a lot of stuff. But just some of the stuff that I think the English side of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Konami has been working on has been doing pretty well. Like, again, those ban list reveals, even though maybe they're not necessarily like the hugest changes or, all that exciting, I think just the way that they present them is kind of a funny way to do that. Honestly, I was going to make a video about the Masked Duelist thing that they do for Master Duel as well, which it could be a whole other discussion, especially with Master Duel, and that leads into other discussions of Master Duel versus TCG. But the point is that I think that looks nice, especially the last one. The last one was really fun. As somebody who appreciates this kind of stuff, and this is kind of what I gush the most about, because when you're actually there, it really does help the experience. When you're watching at home, it makes it look a lot more enticing and like, hey, I would love to be able to attend one of these, even as just a spectator. Personally, when I was at the World Championships for Pokemon and watching the final day, after they had finished all the tournament stuff, they had like a closing ceremony with music, and I think that was really great. Again, the music was a big thematic thing throughout the whole weekend for Anaheim. But some of the people sitting next to me, I kind of heard them like not super into it or saying like, oh, when are we going to get to the trailers? When are we going to get to the reveals? Why are we wasting time on this? And it's like, you really just don't get it. It's all part of like the spectacle, the presentation of this. And, I don't necessarily want to say that like that's a priority, but I think it does help because that is literally what everyone was complaining about the whole stage here and there. That's part of presentation. It's not necessary, but it looks cool. And again, the truth is that it's just another way of starting the Yu-Gi-Oh! Versus Pokemon thing, which I think is really stupid. I think it's like a childish mentality that comes from when you can only afford to have like one Christmas present, right? You can only pick one, and what I like is better than what you like, or what I have is better than what you have, and you can play both, you can enjoy both, and you can be loyal to both, I guess, case in point here. I just wanted to share some of my perspective, again, as a PokeTuber with a pretty decent following, who was able to attend World Championships, as a Yu-Gi tuber who has been in the community for a long time, and like I said, the same discourse just happens every single year. It doesn't necessarily matter which game is better, doesn't necessarily matter which game is cheaper, which one has a better stage, all that stuff. In all honesty, I think I just might be one of the only people who can actually hopefully maybe start to bridge some of these gaps. I've got some PokeTuber friends, and hopefully, maybe we can do some Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos with them, start bringing things together. And if any other Yu-Gi tubers want to do anything, I'm here. So, maybe we can mend some of these relationships. But I definitely enjoyed watching both of them. It was a fun time, and I'm just really excited for Pokemon so much more from attending World Championships, and now, really watching the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships here. Even I was just watching the live stream, I'm really excited to get into things again. So let me know what you think in the comments below about the discussion. And it's not even going to last this weekend. That's the thing too, is it was only during the Pokemon stuff where you could complain about something, or like, you know, either lament that your game Yu-Gi-Oh isn't, you know, doesn't look as good, or even, you know, I think a lot of those posts were coming from people trying to dunk on Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's like, no. And somehow someone comes out of this saying like, oh, you know, both sides are wrong. It's like, I think that we can all just like take a breath, let it out, and enjoy some games. So yeah, if you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know. Otherwise, we're gonna get back to some card lore and discussion videos, hopefully, and more anime stuff. Anyway, this is GatorX. Catch y'all later.